What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm taking a look at a brand new video card from the folks over at EVGA. This is their GTX 1080 for the Win 2 featuring their brand new iCX technology. And that entails a bunch of different things, including a new PCB, an updated software with Precision XOC, as well as some tweaks and changes to the cooler itself over the ACX 3.0 model we're already familiar with the 10 series cards from NVIDIA. So we're going to be taking a look at all that today. I also want to preface this video by saying 2016 was kind of an interesting year for EVGA. They started off really strong with the 10 series launch with the ACX coolers, but then there was that incident, that overheating issue with the VRMs on their GTX 1070s and 1080s due to a thermal pad not being implemented on those cards. So I feel like this in some small way, at least a small way, is a response to that debacle, if you will, and we're going to be taking a look to see if this really is a step up, pun intended, from the existing ACX cards. Now, iCX as a technology is going to cover not just the 1080 for the Win, but also GTX 1060s and 1070s with the base, superclock, and for the Win variants. You will be paying a small premium, however. This is a $30 price hike on this card, actually on this particular model, over its ACX equivalent, and whether or not it's worth those extra 30 bucks, we will find out by the end of this video. So on that note, sit back, relax, I'm gonna crack this box open, and we'll take a closer look at the card. So here's a close-up look at the card itself, and you know, cosmetically speaking, it looks pretty much the same as the ACX. There's not too much to say in the aesthetic department. However, there are a couple changes, one being the backplate here. You can see there's a bunch of ventilation cutouts now, so that just allows hot air to more easily escape off the PCB, which is nice. And EVGA has also sort of re-engineered the backplate, and the base plate for that matter, to function more like a heatsink, because it's now making direct contact with some of the components underneath, and that's supposed to, of course, aid in thermals and whatnot. Actually, if you look at the base plate, there are these little pin fins that are sticking out. They're interlaced pin fins that just add a little bit more surface area to this now base plate slash heatsink, and of course that adds to the thermal dissipation of the whole system. So that's kind of nice. Additionally, we've got some new status LED indicators that would light up right here. There's 3 of them. You can't see them when the card's off. You have to wait for the card to be all powered up and operational. But these essentially give you an at-a-glance look at your temperature for various components on the card, including your GPU, your VRM, and your memory. And basically you can jump into the XOC software and assign any color to any temperature threshold to your heart's content. And that way, let's say, I'm sorry, the garage door is opening if you hear that. Let's say your GPU status LED indicator remains green when you're under 40 degrees Celsius, and then it turns blue between 40 and 60, and then it turns red anything past that. You can pretty much do however you like. It just gives you a really nice, easy way to look at that when you're gaming or whatever. Now, of course, if your system is like under your desk, or you just don't have a case where you can see this part of your graphics card at all times, then they've also allowed you to throw up this information on the OSD via XOC, and that way you can see it on your screen whenever you're gaming and things like that. Now, of course, you might be wondering, well, how are they measuring VRM and your memory? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's probably the biggest change to this card from an engineering standpoint is the 2 MCUs or microcontrol units that have been built in, and that allows you to monitor the new 9 sensors that are now on this board that are scattered about various components, including 1 on your GPU, you get 5 on your power area, and you get 3 for your memory. And of course, you can't forget the 1 additional sensor on the GPU just based on from NVIDIA themselves. But essentially, you get 10 sensors now that you can monitor within the software. And now that you have all this new data coming in, EVGA has also given us a way to kind of handle and respond to that with their new fan design. So these are actually the same fans. They're still the same size, same blade design, and same bearings from what I can tell. However, they're now asynchronous, meaning that instead of just having one fan header on the PCB that is kind of like split into 2 fans and sharing that same header, each fan now has its own dedicated fan header. There are 2 fan headers on this PCB, which means you can now set individual fan curves per fan. So this one would basically handle your GPU temperatures. You can set a fan curve if your GPU is getting too hot. This one will ramp up, and this one can stay perfectly still if your memory and VRM are completely in check, thermally speaking. Or you can have it the opposite. Let's say you're doing a more memory-intensive task that doesn't tax the GPU itself very much, then you can have this one roll at a low RPM, have this one speed up a bit, and the faster fan will kind of cancel out the noise of the other, essentially lowering the overall acoustic profile, which I think is pretty cool. I haven't seen this on a video card before, so we'll see if we can mess around with that later. And finally, before we switch it over to a look at our test bed, I wanted to quickly point out the new fin design here. So there's actually these little tiny holes now on each of the fins. Kind of looks like Swiss cheese in your video card, but essentially with those holes, they allow the air that's being pushed down from the fans to more evenly scatter and spread across the entire fin stack, and of course that's going to dissipate more heat and so forth. There's a big focus on heat dissipation with this new lineup of cards, so hopefully that actually does make a difference. So here's a quick look at our testing hardware, and of course we're going to be testing two of these EVGA GTX 1080s against each other today, one of which is the ACX 3.0 for the win, the other being the iCX for the win 2, which is the card that's clearly on display at the moment on our motherboard. You can tell because one of the fans is spinning while the others is not, taking advantage of that asynchronous technologies. And I really did kind of want to test out both of those independent fan curves for the first time, but I was unable to do so because it's just not working properly in the software. Anytime I try to apply one fan curve to one fan, it overrides the curve for the other. So unfortunately, until EVGA gets back to me with like some kind of software update or they rectify or patch the issue, I'm pretty much stuck to testing this at fixed fan speeds for now between both cards, which actually I don't mind at all because that probably reduces the amount of variance, especially when we're talking about thermal testing. So I did fix both of the fans, both cards, fan speeds at around 2000 to 2050 RPM. So we're going to be getting very consistent, repeatable results there, hopefully. And additionally, we've got a bunch of other hardware to talk about here. We've got a 5960X 8-core from Intel. This is their i7 Enthusiast CPU. I've overclocked it to 4500 megahertz with the help of a Corsair H100i GTX V2 240mm liquid AIO. We've also got the Asus motherboard here. This is the Strix X99 Gaming. It's a beast of a board, along with 32 gigs of G-Skill Trident Z DDR4, of course, at 3200 megahertz. As far as storage goes, we've got a 1TB Crucial MX200 with everything loaded up onto it. It's not full at all, so that shouldn't be an issue in terms of performance slowdowns. And we've also got a Gaming Extreme 1200 watt power supply from Gigabyte, so we've got plenty of power going to all of these components here. I think on that note, we can go ahead and take a look at our data. So here we have the results. And aren't they beautiful? Yes, indeed. So you can see here I've got them split up into two halves. So we've got the ACX numbers on the left and the new iCX results on the right side, just so you guys don't get it twisted. I'm going to be going back and forth like this for a bit, so if you get nauseous easily, you might want to pop a Dramamine or something. We've also got, I want to mention, ambient temperatures were kept at a constant 25°C in my room, thanks to this little guy. Shout out to the window AC unit. You ballin', yo. And everything else was pretty consistent. Fan speed, again, 2000 to 2050 RPM on both of the cards, and these are just screenshots, of course. You can see here we left everything as is in terms of the core clock offset, memory clock offset, and our power and temperature targets are all pretty much consistent from A to B. So we have a nice apples to apples comparison on that. Looking at the temperatures here for our ACX card, 69 degrees C. On the core was the max that it hit, whereas on the iCX, 71. What's up with that? We actually went up 2 degrees on the allegedly cooler card, which, of course, 2 degrees Celsius in gaming is not going to affect your performance at all. You're not going to notice, like, oh, I can really tell this is 2 degrees warmer than it was 5 minutes ago. No, that's not what this is about. However, for a card that is marketed as being thermally superior than its predecessor, I'm pretty sure that this was not EVGA's intent to make a slightly warmer card, even though it may not affect your gaming experience. I don't know if I mentioned this, but both cards are also same. Between ACX and iCX, the core clock frequencies and memory clock frequencies are exactly the same out of the box. This did spike up a little bit higher, 1974 to 1961 on the ACX. However, those could be outliers. They're just maximum values. If you look over here with GPU-Z, you can see that they're clearly clocked. So here's 1721 megahertz core and 1860 boost. Same exact deal over here with the ACX, 1721 and 1860. So if performance is really not where it's at, if there's no difference in performance between the two cards, and at least in this test, since the fans are at fixed RPMs, that acoustics are really not any different either. That's why I didn't even bother doing an acoustics test, because they're spinning at the same speed. Then really thermals are the only thing that could be improved here, which they are not. Last thing I want to point out here is power consumption. So on the ACX card, 86.8% TDP, whereas we actually went up a bit to 93.4% on the iCX card. Now, why could that be? I have a couple speculations, but I don't know if they're true. That's why they're speculations. The first one is that there are new MOSFETs that are embedded or implemented onto the iCX card. So maybe the new MOSFETs have something to do with it, how they're handling the power. And then also the other thing was how the fans are designed. Now that there's two individual or two dedicated fan headers instead of one being split, perhaps that has something to do with the power and the TDP and things like that. I don't know, and I don't really have the tools to test it all out either. So that also reminds me, there's probably some other great tech tubers out there that also have gone live with a video this morning on this card, so go ahead and check them out. I'll put links in the description below. Paul's Hardware, Jay's 2 Cents, Gamers Nexus, of course. Subscribe to those guys, they're awesome. And check out what their findings were, because this is by no means, this is just one test that I ran, guys. Granted, I ran it multiple times, and my results were consistent and repeatable. However, you never know, so go ahead and cross-reference those guys and show them some love. Tell them I sent you. On that note, why don't we go ahead and close this video out with some final words. So my overall takeaway from EVGA's new iCX technology is that it's a huge step in the right direction. I think all the thought and engineering that's been poured into it, they're all really good ideas and good concepts that are going to drive the industry forward as a whole. I think for a long time, we as gamers have been looking at GPU temperatures primarily and overlooking the fact that there are a bunch of other factors involved, such as memory or VRM, which can also overheat just as easily as your GPU if not monitored properly. And now that EVGA's made an easy way for us to do that, we can then respond accordingly with you know, putting the proper cooling strategies into place or messing with the fan curves, for example. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why I can't give a super hard conclusion on this card right now, is because the software wasn't quite ready. But maybe once the software gets patched, let me know if you'd want to see an update to this video, because I think the fact that we're going to be able to control them independently could really add a ton of value to this card. I know it doesn't, it's getting a little bit warmer, 2 degrees warmer than what we saw on the ACX 3.0 today, but I think that's only part of the story, because of course we haven't tested out one of the other main features, which is those fan curves. So let me know if you guys are on board with this card or if you have any other opinions. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Toss me a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all in the next one.